Hey guys, before we get started with our very super special episode with comic book royalty, I don't know how we score these things, but the usual stuff. Like and subscribe, tell your friends about us, hit us up on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Launchpad Pod, and our website, launchpadpod.com. Watch us on YouTube. You're going to want to watch this one on YouTube. It's not very often you get to see comic book royalty in the Launchpad. Now, it's super funny because it's like, normally you're a teacher, so you'll get this analogy. Normally when the teacher's not available and they bring in a substitute, it's usually like some doofy person that they were able to get at like the last minute. You bring in like Michael Bendis. Like, I'm like, hey, I'm busy, I can't do the show. And you're like, oh, I'll get somebody. And I got a backup. Michael Bendis, arguably one of the greatest comic book writers of all time. Easily, top 5 to ever do it. Ultimate Spider-Man, obviously, is huge. Insane work done on Daredevil. Powers, which is a show that I worked on.
Yeah. Did you ever read the book?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because we had him sitting around the office, and I was like, anyway. But it was super funny because it's like immediately I was reading the book, I was like, oh, this isn't the show they're making. That's unfortunate. But it's a good book.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. The show didn't know, like, it didn't understand the comic book genre. I don't know. But the comic book was awesome. It's like a noir sort of mystery with superhero powers. It was like before Boys, I think, was really doing that sort of thing, that edginess. This is just, I don't know. Powers did a really cool, like, detective noir story, trying to solve like superhero murders, which is cool. It's a cool story.
And that was one of those books too. And this isn't going into anything because Brian Michael Bendis and I don't really talk about power.
Talk about Legos and other podcasts.
Yeah. Rumi can't stand that we talked about other podcasts, but Powers was great because it's an idea that we've seen in different iterations of it, different types of ideas similar to that. But for me personally, that was one of the first times I read superheroes in a quote unquote real world situation. It's very there's a lot of shades of Alias, which was Jessica Jones. Alias was Bendis's comic version of Jessica Jones, where he created her, and it's Powers and Alias have a lot of shades of each other in there. It's like, what would you do if there's a superpowered person trying to acclimate to a regular life without powers? And it's pretty cool. Those are certainly not the only two examples, but for me personally, I was so into Bendis when I started reading comics that I read everything that he had that was around, especially if it was Marvel Knights or Marvel Max or something harder. I wanted to read that gritty adult stuff. And those two books are just great examples of it. Powers is not Marvel, I know, but still.
Yeah, it's fantastic stuff. And you got a great interview, man. So I want to say congratulations, because I know this was a big get. It was years in the making. He's been trying to get on our show forever. He's like, yo, the second that McLean kid can't do an episode, I'm in. Put me in the game, coach. And I've just been being a ball hog. I haven't let up the mic 1 second.
Well, I got to give a couple shout outs to people who've tried to connect us, including specifically Diana Schutz, who is our Launchpad podcast friend editor, who edited so many huge books for so many different companies. Specifically, she was just pounding it out at Dark Horse, doing some amazing stuff. And she was on the show, and she was great. And she turned into one of those people who pretty much is almost like a off microphone friend who we've talked to and seen in the interim. And years ago, she tried to hook me up with Bendis, and she said, mention my name, tell him that we talked. She sent him a letter. I was like, listen, these guys are legit. I had a great time on their show. They're worth the shot. And Bendis immediately agreed a month before pandemic hit. We were going to go see him, have a bitchin' interview at WonderCon.
Yeah,
my cousin Paul from the East Coast. My cousin Paul was going to be out here, and he was going to come meet him. And Paul not only is a huge comic nerd, but literally was following in my footsteps. So I was like, here, Ultimate Spider-Man and Daredevil. You need to read those. That's what got me into comics. And now the kid has as much nerd cred as I do. And he was so excited. And then pandemic hit. He didn't come out. WonderCon got canceled. Bendis went back to 1,000 things. Yeah, you moved. And Bendis and I have been talking all these years. Every once in a while I check in and I'm like, hey, what do you think about that interview? And he's like, yes, sorry, I'm super busy. He never even explained. He's just, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm busy. Yeah, I know you're busy, man. You run the Marvel Empire and you're doing 1,000 different things and you never sleep. And
Yeah,
he was always so genuine.
I always see him in the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse was the first one, the Miles Morales movie. It's like he's in your phone. You're calling Miles Morales, but you can't call
Rumi
me.
loves that.
I love that.
He loves that.
That's one of my favorite Easter eggs.
He was also in the Daredevil movie too. His name is mentioned in the original Daredevil movie, but he was always like, "Yes, we'll do it." And I kept being like, "When? Okay, when do you want to do it? Me and Rumi will do it whenever. You tell me when." And then it would be radio silence for another month or two, and then it would, "Oh, sorry, let's try to do it now." Okay, when do you want to do it? I can't commit to a date. For years,
phone
finally.
Tag.
This last, like the best kind of phone tag when you're dealing with five Emmy award winning writer, producer, just extraordinaire. And finally, Cousin Paul was coming back out. So I played the, "Hey, my cousin's going to be sitting next to me" card. And finally, he was like, "Okay, let's do this." And we finally started talking dates. After 3 years, we were putting dates and times. And it was boom, boom, boom. We kept changing it. Mr. Bendis, some of us kept changing it. He changed it a couple times. Finally, like it looked like tomorrow was going to be the day. And I was waiting for like a green light, which I ended up getting like an hour and a half before we actually rolled tape for the podcast. So, and it's
good. You got the interview, man. So hats off to you. Hats off to you for being persistent and being a great interview, dude. You always deliver, and you get to talk to cool people.
Well, that's awesome. That's one of those things that we always say Zeb Wells is one of the best because it didn't. And I remember you and I walking out of Zeb Wells's creepy ass garage, and we were like, that didn't feel like an interview because it was a discussion. It was a chat, and that's how it felt with Brian Michael Bendis, this huge guy who. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say shaped the way that modern comics and the Marvel Cinematic Universe ended up being.
Yeah.
And I'm shooting the shit with him about podcasts and shitty movies and Legos. And it's just a chill conversation. It's one of the more surreal moments that we have, I think, doing this, where you're just like, I can't believe I'm just shooting the shit with this giant god,
It's awesome, man. But we're teasing it too much. Let's get on with the show. Matt's interview with Brian Michael Bendis on the Launchpad podcast.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
I have a good episode for you guys today. Rumi's doing some behind the scenes Rocketeer stuff, but I was able to get none other than Mr. Brian Michael Bendis on the show. And I need to start this by apologizing to you because you have been trying so hard to get on this show for the last 3 years.
Yes. How many times am I going to email you? God damn. Jesus.
A huge part of my life, I reached out to Mr. Bendis years ago. It was right before pandemic started, and he was gracious enough to say, "Yeah, swing by at WonderCon." I think it was at 19 or 20, WonderCon 2020, and he's like, "Let's do an interview. My cousin Paul is in town. We were going to go do this great thing, all set up, and then COVID broke out and just shut everything down." Yeah. And for the last 3 years, we keep telling each other we're going to do it.
Well, there was that little phase where anytime someone goes, "You want to do a podcast?" And I'm like, "No, I want to go play with my Legos." So there was that part of the pandemic, and then it was just timing for us. But I'm so glad we got this done, and I'm thrilled. And jokes aside, thank you for your tenacity and interest in making this conversation happen. So
I appreciate you not getting annoyed. I'm one of those people. If you told me no or said it's not going to happen or I'm busy, I would have let you go. But you kept saying yes. So I kept, and I appreciate you being patient with me. And thank you so much for doing this. I'm very sure it's going to be fun. I've said it to you before, and I've said it on the show before. You had a very, very large part in me personally getting into comics. You also revitalized a lot of Marvel. For those of you who might not know who Brian Michael Bendis is, I'm sure everyone right now is rolling their eyes. If you walked by a comic book store, I'm sure you know his name. Daredevil, Avengers, Spider-Man. I mean, name a thing that he hasn't touched, both DC and Marvel. I want to talk about some stuff today that's not Daredevil, that's not Ultimate Spider-Man, but I have to say, thank you for that. You nailed those. I mean, what an incredible run. I mean, I guess, what does that mean to you that you did those things?
I'm not wired to be proud of myself. It's not like in my way. It's not like going back generations, not in my wiring. So, but Ultimate Spider-Man in particular offers so many opportunities to just so many warm hugs from people like all over the world constantly. My Instagram is constantly, I'm reading it right now, Ultimate Spider-Man. And then we found out just like a couple of days ago that the #1 book on Marvel.com was Ultimate Spider-Man from years ago for this year, the #1 book. And like me and Bagley got to take a moment and email each other, genuinely proud of that. You know what I mean? Like, oh, we didn't mess this up. That's fantastic. You're right? Because it was a great portion of our lives, so it's nice to have not messed it up. So on that level, it's enormous. It's more than you could ever have hoped for. And when I think back on and am actively writing about right now my younger years and thinking about what I wanted as a comic book creator, like what I wanted to do when I grew up, it blows my mind. It blows my mind.
I mean, from experience, but like you said, from all your social media posts and people you probably have seen at cons, your Spider-Man is a lot of people's Spider-Man. You know, I think we all have one or two versions that are the core of that character. And I hope that you at least give yourself, or at least let Bagley pat you on the back, because you guys, that is so many people's version of Spider-Man.
I'm much more wired. When Bagley pats us on the back, I can accept it.
Okay, fair enough.
That's a very healthy thing for me to say. That I was not wired to do that just a few years ago. But yeah, it is. Again, what I do is I remove myself from the equation and remember how I feel about other creators who have done certain things, and then go, okay, that's what they're talking about. Like I can enjoy my friends' successes far more than I can enjoy my own. But then every once in a while, there's something like Marvel announcing the book, it's still doing well. It's just a reminder. You're out there being seen, and it's a warm thing. And I just know from the interactions that they're reading it with a sense of comfort, and that's really great. That's like, you want to connect with other humans, and that's a great way to connect. It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, Spider-Man's I think also a great conduit. He's a great character, a great property to connect with people through, right? I mean, you did it through Daredevil as well, but I think Spider-Man speaks to us on so many different levels.
Really, really peculiarly powerful about Spider-Man. And I talking to your nephew there a little bit ago, I was reminded about like that first year I was on Ultimate Spider-Man, and just think about Spider-Man like 24 hours a day. And I was at the supermarket. I was at like the Ralph's here in Portland. It's called Fred Meyer's, and I was walking around thinking, and all of a sudden I heard a kid the age of your nephew going, Spider-Man, and I turned, and it's a baby. A baby is reaching for a Spider-Man plushie, a full-sized, a googly-eyed Spider-Man plushie, and she's like, I want. And this is a child so young that they can't possibly understand the story of Peter Parker, or this is pre-Miles. They don't get the story or the theme. It's just there's something about Spider-Man that they really love, and then that grows as you get to know what the character means. But so it's fascinating. Such a strangely designed costume is so appealing.
It is
on a primordial level. It's just so I've seen it with my own eyes at every level, at every age, from my perspective as a Spider-Man writer, and it blows me away. And I don't have all the answers, other than I have through discovery figured out that some of the connection that people have to Spider-Man that's so much higher than the other superheroes is because you discover. And you can read this in Danny Fingeroth's book about Stan Lee called The Marvelous Life, that you figure out how much of Peter Parker's pain and his personal struggle was identical to Stan's at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like Stan was writing as personal as he could possibly write, but hiding behind an avatar, right? Which a lot of writers have done over the years. But it's always fascinating to discover that when a writer's really putting it out there, like really bleeding on the page, an audience, even if they don't know, they connect,
Sure.
they grab towards it, and on all these different levels. And it was so interesting to see a character like Stan really dig in deep on Spider-Man and then get that reaction, no matter what medium it's in, no matter how it's being interpreted. It's fascinating.
And you have connected and worked on so many characters. It'd be easier to list the stuff, at least the mainstream stuff that you haven't touched. But like before that, you did all of you had all of your Jinx World stuff that you did. You
still do.
You've written comics, you've written TV, movies, even video games. You have stories in video games, right? Multiple Eisner Award winner. I know you don't want to pat yourself on the back, but I will. You had mentioned Little Bendis before. If you could go back in time, like, were you a comic book kid? Did you read comics as a kid?
Yes, I have. Just so you know, very, very soon, probably by the time this podcast airs, I'll be debuting on my Substack a brand new autobiographical comic called Fortune and Glory, the Musical, which is a sequel to a book I did years ago called Fortune and Glory. But this one is wrapped around the very short time I was the writer of the Spider-Man Broadway musical, the notorious Spider-Man Broadway musical. And I use that shocking bit of business as an excuse to really like do an autobiographical how I got into comics. So I have spent a great deal of time this year, like digging into the answer to the question that you're asking. But yes, I don't have memories without comic books. They were in my life as I was learning to read and discover like what my place in society was. So I have no memory. And then I also, like, as soon as I discovered, oh, those little names on the front page, that's their job. Like, someone's job is to make me feel how I feel today. Oh, then that'll be my job. Then I would like that job, please. That's a way you can make a living. So I remember like George Perez was like one of the first names I read, memorized it because this person who draws all the rubble and the capes, and this I want to do this. I want to not only feel a certain way, but recognize. I want people to recognize, oh, you did that. This is one of that person. So my goal was to be George Perez. That was, and I stood up at the dining room table and I announced it. I said, excuse me, is there a job to be the artist of Spider-Man? And then my mom goes, yeah. I go, well, I am going to be the artist of Spider-Man, and then sat down as if it's been declared. It's been declared. And that it's a true story. And years ago, like while I was in the middle of my Marvel heyday, my mom called me up and it, like, she remembered, hey, do you remember like standing up at the dinner table and saying you're the artist of Spider-Man? Because God damn, you got close. That's amazing. like she's the only one that's like, I was there. You really did do that. So I never did, draw one issue, but 236 in a row. Yeah.
You have done so much, and I want to move a little bit away from some of your more touted titles. But before I do, I love the 2003 MTV animated Spider-Man show cartoon. I thought that was so cool. Yeah. I remember I was in college. I don't remember what year, but say I think I was a sophomore in college at the time. And like, I remember it aired on Friday nights. And I remember thinking, like, who's watching TV aside from me on a Friday night in college? But it was even before I was like a Marvel or even a comics fan. But I thought it was such a cool show. And I think it did the character justice, at least physically moving through. I liked it better than the Sam Raimi movies and everything.
Well, I know I well, that's incorrect, but I appreciate your opinion is wrong. No, I appreciate that. It was a very strange, interesting, everything going on at Marvel at the time. They were coming out of bankruptcy and try to like refinding their corporate way. Like when I got hired, Marvel was full on in bankruptcy. They were like selling furniture for money. And then all of a sudden, the Spider-Man movie came out, and it did huge, like a number Hollywood had never seen before, guaranteeing that like what Blade had shown was that these movies, there's big money here. Like let's really take this seriously. And I had the opportunity to see the Sam Raimi movie before it came out, so I was already building up a series of strange Spider-Man related like life moments that were like happening very quickly. And then all of a sudden I got a call, hey, they're going to do a Spider-Man cartoon for adults on MTV, like, you know, and this was in the vein of what Liquid Television was,
right?
If people remember, that's where Beavis and Butthead came from, and Aeon Flux, and there was quite a wonderful show, and I'm sure it's on YouTube, called Liquid Television, where it was an anthology of high-end animation, mostly handmade, studios trying for new ideas and new technologies. And so out of there came some really interesting new voices and such like that. Highly recommend it. And from there, they were spending a lot of time in the animation space, making Aeon Flux into a TV show and Beavis and Butthead. And then all of a sudden, hey, we're going to do a Spider-Man show. Now, that's awesome. And the cast was awesome. And the writers were awesome. And the animators, who were working on a very tight budget, were really trying to do something interesting, which I've always loved being part of, someone trying to make something where logic says you can't. So, but the bummer was, there was always, like back then, some weird corporate nonsense with Spider-Man. Like, Sony owned the rights to certain things and Marvel owned the rights to certain things. And then you wouldn't find out till you were well into it. Oh no, you can't use any of the villains. Okay, well, that's a big element. It happened to us on the Spider-Woman motion comic as well. We were hired to make a motion comic. And then while we were in the middle of it, said, oh, but she can't move because that's Sony Animation. And
what?
They go, so everything can move, but the thing that's always on camera, and it's from her point of view. And we've already made our choices in that regard. And
production wise, how does that fall through the cracks that you don't know it at the beginning?
Well, again, it's just a large corporation, and these things are, to be honest, fluid. So
sure,
what one person knows, another person may not know yet, and that just happens at these big corporations. It just does. And in this one, it was messy. There was some messiness, which is, I can't believe it was so messy that it's amazing that in my lifetime it has resolved itself, and now we get these wonderful Tom Holland movies. But at the time, they were Spider-Man had a lot of mommies, and they all had to be listened to. So it was cool. It was Neil Patrick Harris was in it, Lisa Loeb, Mary Jane, and it was just like a very cool cast. And it was nice to see like CGI animators trying for something they may not have had the time or money for, but really trying to go for it. But I do remember so clearly an MTV executive, not a Marvel executive or a Sony executive, and this is after the Sam Raimi movie has already come out and made like $118 million, whatever it opened up. It had already made a lot of money, and anyone in the business is going, well, damn, Spider-Man is popular, right? And this guy calls a meeting on the phone and says, why does it have to be a spider? And I laughed. I went, that's funny. And he goes, no, seriously, aren't they like icky? Like spiders are icky. Do people like spiders? And it's funny because that is connected to the origin of Spider-Man, that Stan could only get those first 11 pages out of Amazing Fantasy 15 because the publisher, Martin Goodman, said the same thing. I don't think kids like spiders. I don't think spiders are going to be a hit. So you can have like these 11 pages. Like that's all he had.
Wow.
So here we are 40 years later, 30 years later, whatever it was, an executive going, yeah, spiders are icky. And I remember thinking, I don't want to go to these meetings anymore.
How do you respond to that?
I did laugh. I've done this a couple of times where I laughed and, oh shit, they're not joking. Like Yeah, it's a tough one, and I've been guilty of that a couple of times. And I'm never doing it on purpose. I'm mad at myself. It's funny to say now, but it's very embarrassing at the moment. You go ha! like that, and so yeah. But I did feel between the villains and MTV, who was in the middle of a wave of dating shows. Like that's what they were doing a lot of. So the dating show executive giving us notes on the cultural literacy of Spider-Man. I remember not wanting to be in those meetings anymore. So it all ended up going away quickly. But I was glad for the experience. It ended up being one of those no one got hurt kind of failures that then when I got hired to work on the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon and the video game, I was much more prepared for
that makes sense.
What the partnerships and what the what my energy should be in that room. So because going right from the comic book, which is literally a blank page and an artist who can draw anything, and like there's literally nothing you can think of that can't happen in this space in the comic book, being from the most intimate to the most bombastic to a space where it's very limited what we're able to accomplish, and let's see what we can do. And so you can make good stuff out of both situations, but going from one to the other is a bit of a whiplash.
That's interesting too, because I feel like part of the reason I personally like that show is because it was animation, so he can do a little bit more Spider-Man type things than even in the live action movies, even as great as they were, especially for the time. But you're right, animation is not as limitless as the page because there is a budget involved, right? You have to pay those animators. All the digital stuff is there's so many more layers in that. And you could certainly see, I don't want to say flaws, but you can see where they spent money and where they didn't spend money in that show, right?
I literally haven't looked at it since we were working on it. I haven't even seen it in passing.
It's on Disney Plus now.
Yeah, I know. So I don't, and I'm happy about that. But and I'm really happy those Ultimate Spider-Man cartoons are out there because that was a good time, and I'm glad they're so I'll have to take a peek at it and see what my cringe level.
Well, spoiler alert! It ends on a giant cliffhanger. I'm sure you remember that.
I vaguely what was it?
He puts he this I don't want to be Spider-Man no more. He puts it in a suitcase and tosses it into the Manhattan.
That might have been the writer's room wishing.
Well, that's kept me up nights, Mr. Bendis. I need to know what was going to happen next.
I think he's okay, and I don't know. Based on the trailer to Across the Spider-Verse, maybe we'll find out. Who knows?
Oh man, that'd be so cool.
I don't know if that's the case. I shouldn't say that.
I thought Neil Patrick Harris was a great Spider-Man and Peter Parker too, right?
He was delightful. My memories of the whole cast were very game and very into it, and very much feel that they felt the weight of this is Spider-Man. Let's take it seriously. So yeah, they were great, 100%.
Well, I could talk Spider-Man with you all day, and as much as you are in that vibe, you're a crime guy, right? You're a noir guy. Your heart is also there. And again, I'm not even going to open up a Daredevil box with you because that book, even more so maybe than Ultimate Spider-Man, made me love comics as a medium. It got me so into that character and into the sophistication of the entire medium.
Well, I mean, I lucked out. I came up through crime comics. I loved superhero comics as a kid and all through college. And then as a younger creator, I think I became obsessed with film noir and the language of film noir and true crime and doing research like a crime writer. And that opened so many doors to me creatively. But then when I got the call from Marvel to do Daredevil and Spider-Man, I was like, oh, these are all crime comics. Like Spider-Man has always been a crime comic, like from its earliest days. And so was Daredevil as a pulp.
Sure.
I mean, that's a crime comic. So with the realization that a crime has to be committed for any of these plots to move forward, then they're all technically crime comics. I'm a crime writer with a different perspective than some of these other writers. So yeah, it definitely had a lot to do with my early success once these things started rolling, both on Daredevil and Spider-Man, was I was actively applying other language to the characters than my heroes had or people who had come before.
Well, you hit those. I mean, you hit Daredevil so well, and with Alex Malieve's art, just was the visual to your words, but that's a Pandora's box. We'll be here for 4 hours.
Listen, I'm working with Alex right now this weekend. Alex and I are working on a brand new crime project for Dark Horse at Jinx World that we're super proud of. So this is an ongoing concern in my life. This is one of the most important collaborators in my life. And I had worked with him before Daredevil quickly on Sam and Twitch for Todd McFarlane.
That's where I was going.
Done that good of a job as a collaborator. So having had the second chance with Daredevil that has carried us all the way through to the project we're working on now is one of the great joys of my life.
I will read anything that the two of you do. I mean, I pretty much, because of what you've done together, I'll read either of you separate, but together, it's like, even if it's not my favorite thing, I still love the flavor and I still love the flair. And again, that's like what you talked about earlier about any production where the team is working together, the audience can, I really do believe the audience can see that and feel that. And with you guys, that's there, it's there all the time. But you'd mentioned Sam and Twitch. I really would love to talk about that Image stuff, specifically Hellspawn, because you wrote a bunch of issues of Hellspawn.
Well, I tried.
That they're badass. And I, for me personally, that was the Spawn I wanted to see. And McFarlane's Spawn, the main flagship title and series, was great, but yours took it to that seedy level where I think he should live. I would love to hear your thoughts about that in general, but specifically that character in that series was Todd's baby, right? Yeah. And now you have to write a more grown-up, arguably more grown-up version of that at Image. Was there a lot of oversight, or was he just like, go for it, man, and let's see what you do? How did that feel from your eyes?
Well, he's an interesting guy, Todd. I mean, people can tell that from any interview that he gives. And he called me out of the blue and hired me, like out of the blue. And even how he hired me from what he described to me was so weird. Like, I was an Image creator at the time. I had been brought in by Jim Valentino, our publisher, Caliber Press, which was this really interesting small press publisher that discovered me and David Mack and Mike Oeming. Look, almost everyone who's making comics right now had gotten a start at Caliber, and but Caliber had fallen apart, and we all needed a new home. And Jim Valentino had opened the door at Image in its earliest days to creators like myself who were not going to hit Image numbers, but it gave us a safe and happy home that wasn't going to hurt anybody, right? And so we were there, and so I was in the Image machine. And then supposedly, according to Todd, he was at a meeting with Mark Silvestri at his office, and they were like having an argument about toys or something. And then Todd just like grabbed some books off of his table and walked out of the meeting. And one of the books was my comic book Jinx, and it's a book I did about a bounty hunter. And then he got into his car and then read it all the way home, and then called me and then said, "Hey, I just read this book I stole from Mark Silvestri, and I have a couple of projects that I want to start making, and I can't physically do them." I'm like, "Oh, what do you got?" And he goes, "Well, I got one about a giant cyborg monkey called Cygor." And I remember going, "What else you got?" Like, I just that's not what I do, right? And there are people that do that perfectly. I'm just not one of them.
Sure.
And he goes, "Well, I got these two cops." I go, "I'm in." I can do cops, for sure. And it was, two cops in the Spawn universe, and set up very much like, an Abbott and Costello Odd Couple kind of scenario already set up. And I was like, fantastic. So, and from there, he was a great boss in that he did not give us any notes and let us do our thing and treated us the way he would want to be treated.
Yeah,
it was fantastic. Both pro and con me a pro me because it let me figure some stuff out that I needed to figure out as I was headed towards the main stage at Marvel. Also con me because some of the things I needed to figure out were how to be a better collaborator. And because I was coming from being a writer artist who did everything, including the lettering, I like on Jinx, I did everything, right? So when you're doing everything, it's really hard to tell where the storytelling stops. Like, where does my job as writer end? Because to me, it's in the layouts and it's in the inks, it's in the lettering choices. So I literally would write Sandwich Witch and then draw Sandwich Witch and then hand my drawings to the artists, including Alex, and say, here, just do this, right? And that was bad collaboration. That was not good of me. That was me overstepping and being a little megalomaniac. But in my heart, I was trying to be helpful, but looking back at it, I go, oh, I was being over demanding of my collaborators. And I bring this up every chance I get because I just want people to know there's a lesson to learn here. And if what I'm doing sounds like something you might be doing as a collaborator, yeah, stop and think about it for a second. Now, what I lucked out was that the results weren't terrible, but what happened was when I did get fired off of Sandwich Witch, Alex was still drawing the book from Todd's scripts, and Todd's scripts were phone calls. So he went from a full script and layouts to Todd being much more improv and open to interpretation. And when I saw what Alex was doing with Todd's more open-minded collaboration, I was ashamed by what I had done. So when we got the call to do Daredevil together, it was a huge second chance for me to write well for Alex, to like just to like I had learned a lot through the firing that, oh, if I ever got a chance, I would do it differently. And so we got to hit the ground running on Daredevil, because like Sandwich Witch was like this practice that we got to do, thankfully on someone's dime. And then here we go on Daredevil. So we haven't had an opportunity to stop since.
You're a very frank interviewee. I like that you just put it on the table. I mean, clearly you're in a position where that doesn't hurt or scare you, but I don't think in general a lot of people can do that. So it's refreshing to hear advice like that and frankness like that.
I'm a college professor too, and what I've learned throughout the years, and I'm sure you feel like you learn from failure. You don't learn, like I don't learn anything from the big successes other than, oh, that was nice, right? But I didn't learn anything that I could take with me to the next project. But every time I've messed something up, or I've been surrounded by, oh, this isn't working, I've learned something. So I like to share that part because that's the good stuff.
I feel, but again, you're right, and I'm actually a teacher, and when the kids get upset because they screw something up, I'm saying you learn from mistakes. You literally, I don't think you can learn in most situations without, but I think that's one of those things is we as humans don't really share and don't really focus on because it admits culpability and fault and stuff. But it's refreshing and cool to hear. Yes. And I'm sure people listening are gonna really appreciate your openness.
Part of my philosophy here is, I've learned this from teaching, is that almost the entire time I've been teaching, we've lived in a society run by reality shows, and one of the lessons of reality shows is either you're a winner or you're a loser. Like, either you're going to win this bake-off or go home. All right, either you're the greatest Lego master or fuck off. And that's not what it's really like to be a creator. It's just not.
Sure.
It's like sometimes you win and sometimes it works out, and you can know everything you knew that on that thing that won and it not worked this time. It's just, so I like to counter that constant energy that's out there, telling young people they're winners and losers creatively, and saying there's no such thing. It's just a journey.
There, yeah. Let's change gears hardcore.
Sure.
You've mentioned Legos twice.
Uh-oh.
Are you a Lego guy?
I am a Lego guy, but that back there, that's a custom Lego. Like, I was at my custom Lego store and it was in the display case, and I was like, hey, I need to buy that. They go, oh, it's not for sale. I go, yeah, hi, I created Miles Morales. There's nobody on the planet that wants this more than me. Except for maybe Lord and Miller. And so we're big Lego people. And having like characters of ours turned into Legos is about as big a deal as you could ever hope. It's a big part of some mental health situations in our house. It's for the entire family. It's been a very good thing for us. So I love just.
That's awesome. Are you Lego kid from way back too?
I was, and then I stopped, but Lego adult me and the time I share with my kids with Legos and stuff is pretty great. Yeah.
What are give me some of your sets both back then and now?
Oh, if I took you to we have an apartment filled. We have the giant Taj Mahal, and we have the Beatles from the Yellow Submarine set at the Taj Mahal, but they're there, and from there the multiverse creates, and so there's a whole Batman section in one part, and then it turns into, so we're building this whole thing, and we have a whole a Marvel tinged city. We've taken all the city sets and mixed them with the Marvel sets and turned them into a giant Marvel New York.
Oh, you have a when you said we have an apartment, in my mind the apartment is solely for Legos.
Garage, we have an over our garage kind of like place for comics and Legos. So
how cool is that?
Yeah.
What's the next set on the docket for you guys to crack into?
Well, this is my privileged space. Is that, do I want to open my Daily Bugle? I'm just so happy. I have like 3 characters in the Daily Bugle set, and I'm like, do I want to open it or do I want to keep it? And also, I'm like thrilled Ironheart made the Wakanda sets. Like that really that delights me to no end. So they're like Miles particularly brought to me like everything I didn't know I wanted. Like I've merch has always blown my mind. Like we had merch early on in Ultimate Spider-Man, and I was like, whoa, merch is cool. And but Miles got a Campbell soup can, a Pez, a Lego, and what was the other one? Oh, a Band-Aid. There's a Miles Band-Aids, and I was like, though that really warmed my heart. I feel very seen.
Do you think you'd feel the same way if it was Scarlet or Jinx or anything else?
Because
it's your baby.
On Powers, we have a lot. We've had quite a bit of merch, so I have experienced it. So yes, and I would like any of those things to hit the cultural prevalence of Spider-Man. That would be lovely, and I'm ready for all of that.
I would wear a Scarlet Band-Aid. I think that'd be cool.
Sure, absolutely. And Scarlet's is full of merch. It's built for merch. But so I kind of feel like I get to have my cake and eat it too. Like I get to tell stories like Scarlet and not worry about nonsense of merch or anything.
Yeah.
Having things like, like the fact that Jessica Jones had as much merch as she had was like that's something no one was thinking.
Think about that when you were writing Alias?
Nope, not 1 second did I think that they're going to make things like that. So it warms my heart. It delights me. It warms me. I can't speak to it high enough. It's a great feeling. So I feel like I get to have my cake and eat it too. I really do. I really awesome. Like I got to do like whatever we can think of in the creator owned space. And if it hits, great. But you do not have to like worry about it because Miles is out there, Jessica's out there, Riri's out there, and it's quite lovely.
I'm a big Lego guy from back then and now. I have a couple Spider-Man stuff specifically for my son who you met. He's 3. He's too young to really do too much Legos, but he's into it. My aunt and I did Legos literally since I was 5. And recently I bought her a set on eBay. That was one that we have a picture of us doing. And she's my Lego aunt. And we looked at the Taj Mahal, but we wanted to get the original Ultimate Collector set Millennium Falcon. And it was like our white whale. And we searched forever. We got hosed by scammers. Yeah. We eventually got it. And 4 people spent 20 hours in a house where the entire living room was set up with tables. It took us 20 hours, but it was it was awesome.
That's amazing. Just so people know, like if I'm out and about and someone like you just did to me today with your nephew, introduced me to your awesome nephew, who is clearly too young to fully
understand. He's my son. That's my son.
Oh, that's your son. I apologize.
Kent, yeah. The other guy, my cousin, this is my cousin Paul.
There you go.
He's sitting in on the podcast today. So we got a son and a nephew. But go ahead.
Let me see if I have one right here. But I anytime I meet a youngin who's into Spider-Man, I give them a Miles keychain, a Miles Lego keychain.
Do you really just have a pocket of them and you walk around?
I have like 2 in my pocket at all time. No, like when I was a kid, Steve Martin famously had, like, he wouldn't sign autographs, but he would give you a business card that said, "I met Steve Martin," because that's all you wanted. That's really what
sure.
wanted, right? So I was like I would always have like a couple comics in the car, and then like, oh, there's that it never seemed like the right thing, but I have a couple Miles in my pocket, and if it's a little kid and they go, "Oh, he writes Spider-Man," and the kid got that, I don't know what that means, a look on their face. I give them a keychain, and it's a nice little thing. So Lego is how I connect with the kids on Spider-Man.
That's so cool. Well, we will certainly be visiting you at a con, and he will certainly get a Lego. He would be super into that too.
Yeah. Anytime I see someone who this kid needs a moment, like the Legos come out.
That's so. Well, it's like a double moment, man. That's like,
yeah,
the symbol and idealism of Spider-Man and Legos. Like, man, you're just blowing minds all over the place, Mr. Bendis.
All right.
We'll let you go in a couple minutes, but before we started the show, you and I were talking, and you said you're a big fan of the podcast. How did this get made?
Yeah. So it's a very comic book friendly podcast. Many of our friends have been involved in it, or our friends or fans of Paul and Jason particularly. And for years, my friends have been like, "Oh, you got to listen to this podcast." And I just did not have the extra bandwidth. Like, I've got 4 kids and a bunch of full-time jobs. I just didn't have it. And then during the pandemic, I caught one, and I loved it. And it's been my comfort food like all year. So now I've spent the whole year just listening to nothing but every episode of How Did This Get Made? And I'm almost at the end of my initial run. And I'm just, I can't recommend it high enough. It's been my comfort food for a while, and I'm so glad they're part of our community of comic book people. Like, Paul makes comics too.
Sure, yeah.
So I it's such a wonderful experience.
Have you ever seen it live or just listened to the show?
No, I've been invited. I didn't go. I'm like mad at myself now of the opportunities that I had over the years that I didn't I couldn't make work, and I've since reached out and made restitution on this. But this is if you want to listen to great episodes to get a taste, Drop Dead Fred episode is kind of like their Stairway to Heaven. And my friend Ed Brubaker, fellow Daredevil writer Ed Brubaker, does the Daredevil Ben Affleck Daredevil episode. Highly recommended. It was just wonderful, and Ed's great on it. So there's a bunch of great episodes.
As a quick aside, would you feel at liberty to tell your feelings about that movie?
The
Ben Affleck
one?
Yeah.
Well, no, yeah, but it sounds bullshit. I mean, so I was at Marvel, I was on Daredevil, I didn't I didn't get fired, and not only didn't I not get there was to be the Daredevil, beyond Daredevil. That's the book. That's the reason we wanted to make comics.
Yeah,
I'm a Frank Miller baby. That was going on while I was in high school. It's hard. You cannot disconnect.
Right.
How important that is to me. So now I'm on Daredevil, not ripping off Frank Miller, which was my big goal. Don't rip him off. And telling a story with one of my best friends, David Mack. So I'm on there, and not only do I not get fired, but they offer me Spider-Man, and then they go, "Hey, you want to read the Daredevil screenplay?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And the screenplay, as has been reported elsewhere, if you got to read the screenplay before you saw the movie, the screenplay was much better.
Mm-hmm.
It was there on the page, which makes the final result that much more frustrating. And then for me, I wasn't referenced in the screenplay, but by the time they started shooting, I had done enough Daredevil where they included me and David in the references. They referenced our by name, and I had never been referenced in a movie before. All right, that's amazing. So I loved it. Like, so I it's hard for me to see the movie for what it is because it was such a warm time in my life. Like, it's just like me and my friends not messing up Daredevil to the point where they gave us a shout out in the movie, which yes, I wish was better. Yeah, and I think I recommend watching the Siskel and Ebert review of the movie if you can see that.
It's, it's what comic movies were then.
It speaks to a time.
That's a good way to say it.
And I know this sounds like faint praise and the kind of shit that if someone said about me, I'd be like, nah, but it does make you appreciate the TV show and the Netflix shows in general, all that much more.
I agree.
It really does. That like lessons were learned and applied immediately to that character, and we got a good TV show out of it. So, yeah.
Back to how did this get made? Give me either some of your favorite movies that you learned about from the show that you then checked out, or at least just favorite moments that while you're listening to that show, you're like, get the hell out of here. What the fuck?
Well, they do hit, like, as they've described, they've hit an enormous amount of movies from the year 1987, which was a year in which I was very susceptible to watching bad movies. We were the only family in the neighborhood who had Showtime and cable. So my friends would come over and just watch whatever the fuck Showtime, which often was a lot of these movies that were like the movie Scavenger Hunt was on like over and over and over and over and over and over again. And so it wasn't like our I know I sound like such an old man because like my my son was complaining there wasn't enough Star Wars material to watch on Disney Plus.
Fair, yeah.
Like, excuse me, young man. When I was your age, I had one movie.
Yeah. We had Shadows of the Empire hardcover and we liked it. That was as much as we got.
Yeah.
And role playing. Remember going to like getting role playing books just to find background?
Yes. So yeah, we were hungry for content. And so our relationship to this content is very different. So having gone through all the Jean-Claude Van Damme movies with How Did This Get Made, it just opens your eyes to the artistry involved in a way that you normally wouldn't appreciate.
Well, I'll let you go, but give me one thing if you can. Either Spider-Man or Daredevil. What is a story or a plot point or a line? What's something that you weren't able to put in for it? I don't even mean editing wise. I just mean you didn't get to that story or you had better things to say.
There's always like, I used to make a joke about like how like fans would go, how do you like when I was writing Powers and Spider-Man at the same time, and someone go, do you ever get like confused about like where the story should go? And I'm like there was no I'm very proud of the fact that I never was like writing Spider-Man murdering a prostitute. Like that was never gonna happen. So I mean,
any dirt would be great to hear, but I'm saying just anything that you didn't put down on a page for whatever reason, whether you were told no or you didn't get to.
Part of the reason I ended up leaving Marvel was because I came to the realization that my 18 years with the character on multiple titles, sometimes in multiple universes, was a grand gift. Greater than I hold the record by like 7 years, so I honestly can tell you that I felt that not only had I done everything I could do, but get the fuck out of the way so someone else can now do it, and that they can now have this blessing that you've been given can now be given to somebody else if you would get the hell out of the way. And you can, and you're being offered to. So that was a big one. But it's hard because the whole time when you're working on a character like Spider-Man, it doesn't feel like work. It doesn't feel like it feels like a beautiful share like a shared connection between creators and readers, and why on earth would you ever not do that? So it's hard to like take a step back and go, you've done this story, time to go. And that was it. Like I'd come to the realization that I was coming dangerously close to repeating ideas, and that's what you and you don't want to do that. You want to like, it's time to go. So I was grateful then I could take all my lessons of Spider-Man and apply them to Superman and see which lessons applied and which ones didn't. And that I was highly grateful for. So so the answer is no, I don't think I did. And in the time since I've been gone, I've had a couple opportunities to revisit that question. Is there anything else you want to do with the character? And the answer was not more than creating new things, not more than like attending to our Jinx World line with the Ones and Pearl, and these are all new ideas and new characters and new challenges that I don't know if I can do. I don't know if I have the tools to make that happen, and that's much more exciting as a creator than doing the thing that, oh, it's been 18 years. You got this one. Like, you can do this. So I also, now that I look back and I have some of these crazy records at Marvel, and realize that like, oh, nobody cares that you like, nobody there's no Guinness Book of Marvel records. It's just like I maybe should have left the gig even years before I did, like, and pursue this. So I'm grateful that I've been able to look back on that and go, yeah, no stone unturned, did it, got it all done. And also I'm privileged by the fact, like we saw earlier, that people are still reading it. So it's like I'm still getting all the juice that you get out of being a Spider-Man writer without having to do any of the actual work. It's fantastic. So I did not know that would come. Again, that you don't know that's how it's going to be. And it's pop culture. Some things fade away, some things stick. You don't know what's going to be what. So I'm very grateful that Ultimate Spider-Man, at least for now, is still part of the conversation. And also these movies coming out every couple of years, particularly the Miles movies, just keeps it alive in a way, in such a vibrant way, more than I could have ever hoped for. So,
well, I'll speak for all of us and I'll say thank you for everything you've done, because I think like you said, it's not work. It wasn't a job for you, but it meant a lot to a lot of people. And I mean, you saw that today. I had my son talk to you and my nephew and even myself. It's like, there are people who read it and you allow them that escape for a half hour. Then there's people who read it and take lessons from it and, really think about it. It really changes lives. So, and it's also been fun as hell. You wrote some great stuff.
Oh yeah, it's a blast. And when people are listening to podcasts like this and they're thinking about, hey, I would like to do that. Yeah, go do it. Honestly, go make a comic by yourself. Go make a comic with your friends. It's the cheapest way still to express yourself. You don't have to buy a guitar or a camera. You just got a blank piece of paper and you fold it, you got yourself a comic. Go make one. Go tell your truth, whatever it is. No matter whether it's the most serious thing in your mind or the silliest idea you can think of, go do it, because it feels good making it. It's very therapeutic. It's very soulful. And if everything goes well and you can find a way to get that work into other people's hands, that connection can be powerful. It can be worldwide. It could go as big as you could possibly imagine. So I highly recommend it. Go make some comics.
Well, even
if you mess it all up, it's great. Yeah,
I'll read it. Even where can people see what you're up to? Where can people follow you? If people don't know where to see what you have coming down the bend, where can we keep an eye on your stuff?
Well, go to jinxworld.com and that will take you to my ongoing situation at Dark Horse. Dark Horse is now my happy home for all of our creator-owned books, including Powers and our new ones like The Ones and Joy Operations, which we just got greenlit for sequels for both of those. So we're pretty excited that we get to keep making our new stuff. So thank you for that. Also, I have a book out with Andre Lima Araujo called Phenomena. It's out through Abrams Comics Arts. It's the first of a series of graphic novels. It is one of the most beautiful books I have ever had my name on it. If you love what we did on Spider-Man, I think you'd really dig what's going on with Phenomena. It's a on all ages, fantastical book about what might happen to our world coming in the future. And also, I have a situation going on Substack. It's a newsletter service, but they've come to a bunch of us comic creators like Jonathan Hickman and Brian K. Vaughan and Kelly Thompson, and we're all doing comic book work on Substack. I'm teaching a live class. So if you want to learn how to write, you can come join us for the class. I'm also doing a book called Creation, where we go behind the scenes and how we created all of these characters. So if you like what we talked about today and you want the deep dive on Jessica Jones or Powers or Miles or Riri Williams, you can listen to or read or watch our book Creation on Substack. And coming very soon on Substack is the aforementioned Fortune and Glory, the musical, an autobiographical comic about my short time writing the Spider-Man Broadway musical disaster.
When you read a Batman comic, you're like, when does this guy sleep? Mr. Bendis, what, like, do you take a nap during the day? What do you, how do you do that?
Listen, it's first of all, what a, isn't everything I just described sound like, well, that sounds like a great way to spend your day, like making all that stuff. Right. So this is the opportunity right now is for me to go do all this. So I would like to go do all of this. Yeah. So it's a real joy. Actually, I'm thrilled about the Substack situation because it has flat out allowed me the time to focus on a handful of projects I've been dying to do, which is including Creation and Fortune Glory. So I'm so this new space the comic book world has opened up since I started making comics has been really exciting. And allows us to all try like a lot of new things.
Like keeping yourself busy. You guys can follow. You guys can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Launchpad Pod, and you can check us out at our website, launchpadpod.com. Mr. Bendis, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for dealing with my. We finally did it. It's been a long time coming, and I really do appreciate your patience with me and finally sitting down to do this. This has made my day. My cousin Paul's here, and I'll tell you both, you know that because I know you listen. We have a secret handshake on the Launchpad podcast, and I would be honored if you did it with me.
All right, let's see it.
I'll show you how we do it. So you start with your hand sideways, and you come in like this, and you go, whoosh. Then you invert it other way, and then you go, and it's a raspberry as the rocket ship blasts off. So the three of us can do this together. You just do it towards the screen. So we'll come in sideways, invert, and then a raspberry up. Okay. Sound good? Ready? 3, 2, 1. Whoosh.
There you go.
Thank you very much.
Me and my family, we've been doing the Kiki Palmer Nope handshake. We've just been doing that's been us for like a year and a half now. All right.
Well, thank you very much.
Please say hi to your son. That was an awesome conversation. I'm so glad this went. I hope you got what you wanted out of it. I'm sorry for the delay. I sincerely apologize.
I knew you weren't taking a nap. I knew you weren't relaxing. It's been a crazy couple of years. I know you've been busy, but seriously, thank you for joining us. This has been the Launchpad Podcast with Brian Michael Bendis. We really appreciate it.
All right. Have a good one, guys.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.